We are living through one of the hardest and most defining periods in our history. Every day, Russia reminds us who we are dealing with. Russia is trying to break us not only on the front line, it is trying to make fear a part of our daily lives, to force us to get used to the sirens, to the explosions, to the losses, to the thought that this war will last forever. But we cannot get used to it. And we cannot allow Russia to define what Ukraine will become. It is precisely at this moment that Ukraine faces monumental challenges. The war continues, the enemy shifts tactics, and we need to produce weapons faster, implement technologies, negotiate with partners, and make critically important decisions every single day. In such a situation, the country cannot remain without a fully appointed Minister of Defense. This is not normal. In a country fighting every day for its survival, defense policy cannot exist in a temporary mode. But the problem is much broader than a single position or a single ministry. We must answer a fundamental question. How should a state function if the war lasts for years? And the next, what if the war continues for another year, 2, 3? Can Russia effectively be given the right to dictate when Ukrainians can choose their government again? I am convinced that the answer is no. Democracy cannot be held hostage by Russia. We are fighting precisely because we want to remain a free European state. Therefore, we must find a legal, safe, and realistic mechanism that will allow Ukraine to restore a full democratic process even amidst a prolonged war. This is complex. We need to guarantee the voting rights of our military, of millions of Ukrainians abroad, of people in frontline regions. We need to ensure the security of the electoral process, the independence of institutions, and trust in the outcome. But complexity does not mean impossibility. Ukraine has repeatedly done what the world considered impossible. We can find a solution here as well, because democracy is not a peacetime luxury. Democracy is part of what we are fighting for today. There is another reason why this conversation is needed right now. People cannot endlessly live in a state where they do not understand why certain decisions are made, why some reforms move forward while others are blocked, why decisions needed on the front lines today spend months circulating through government offices. And it is particularly dangerous when society develops the feeling that the main criterion for an appointment is not professionalism, results, or the ability to transform the country, but personal loyalty to the system. A modern state cannot function this way, and a country fighting a war for its existence certainly cannot function this way. We must also talk about corruption, not because it is a buzzword, but because during wartime, corruption takes on an entirely different meaning. In peacetime, stolen money means a worse road, hospital, or school. In wartime, stolen money can mean a drone that was not purchased, ammunition that did not reach the front, an EW system that was not installed, a vehicle that failed to evacuate a wounded soldier, a technology that could have been put into production but was not. That is why corruption in wartime is not merely a financial issue. It is a matter of our capability to survive and win. Every single hryvnia intended for defense must work for defense, not for private pocket, not for political influence, not to sustain someone's schemes, not to preserve someone's position. Yet corruption is only a symptom. The main problem runs much deeper. We have a systemic crisis of governance. The old system too often lives by its own rules. It protects itself. It fears change. It makes decisions slowly. It can punish initiative and reward loyalty. It can preserve inefficient structures for years simply because everyone has grown used to them. The core issue is that a state is a system that requires clear goals. We need a clear strategy and truly effective teams. Parliamentary management must be built on a solid majority program, shared values, and core principles, not on private interests in defense, pharma, gambling, or the tax system. This is essential for true governance, because parliament is the heart of Ukrainian democracy, not its wallet. And war does not forgive this. Ukraine needs a very simple principle. Power must mean responsibility. If you received authority, be accountable for the result. If you received a budget, show what was accomplished. If you received a position, explain what you achieved. People can endure extraordinarily hard times. Ukrainians have already proven this. But there is one thing that is exceptionally difficult to endure endlessly, a sense of injustice. When a person risks their life on the front line while someone in the rear steals from the war effort. When a business pays taxes only to face law enforcement arbitrariness. When a talented individual cannot change the system because they aren't one of us. When society is simply informed of decisions, but no one explains why they were made. This is how the most vital foundation erodes, the trust between the citizen and the state, and this trust must be restored. There is one more thing we must talk about: hope. Hope that tomorrow will be better. Hope that this country is changing. Hope that after all our sacrifices, we will not return to the very same system we tried to leave behind for years. We are certainly not fighting for a country without hope. We are fighting for a state where a person feels that their voice matters. Ukrainians have always given their government an immense amount of trust, especially during wartime. Millions of people agreed to extraordinary restrictions, hardships, and sacrifices because they understood the country must hold the line. And this carries immense responsibility for any government, because a credit of trust is not a license to act without explanation. It is an obligation to be even more honest with society. This is where a simple principle of a new social contract must exist. The citizen trusts the state speaks honestly to the citizen fulfills their duty, the state fulfills its own. The individual protects the country protects the individual. People do not demand that the state never make mistakes. They understand how complex this war is. They understand that sometimes there are no perfect solutions, but they have a right to the truth. This is how trust is restored. And along with trust, hope returns. Hope that after this war, Ukraine will not just be a country that survived, but a country that became stronger, fairer, and freer. We have no right to let the old system take this hope away from Ukrainians. We already have an enemy. It is Russia. Russia does not just want to take our land. It wants to prove that the Ukrainian model of freedom does not work. That is why Ukraine must prove the opposite. Ukraine can simultaneously wage war and remain a democracy. Elections are not just a ballot paper. They are the moment when authority returns to the citizen and says, "Here is what we have done. Now you decide whether you trust us to continue." This exact principle sets a democratic state apart from a system where authority itself decides when society gets to evaluate it. We must not let Putin decide when Ukrainians can choose their government. Ukrainian democracy must not depend on the goodwill of the Kremlin. We have seen our military accomplish the impossible every single day. We have seen our engineers build technologies in months that take major global defense companies years to develop. We have seen young Ukrainians who don't wait for someone else to solve a problem, they find the solution themselves. We have seen people who, after a sleepless night of bombardment, go to work in the morning and keep building the country. We have seen those who lost their homes, businesses, and loved ones, yet never lost faith in Ukraine. And when we see such people, we realize Ukraine's problem is certainly not its people. Our people have long been ready for a different country. Now our state must become worthy of its people, a state where institutions are stronger than names, where results matter more than loyalty, where truth matters more than political convenience, where corruption does not steal our future, and where the Ukrainian people are not bystanders. The Ukrainian people are the source of power. The state exists for the citizen. Institutions exist for results. The army exists to protect the nation, and the government exists to serve Ukraine, never itself. This is the strong, prosperous Ukraine that we must build together. This is the sovereign, free Ukraine that we must defend with all our might. And this is the hopeful, resilient Ukraine that we must leave as a lasting legacy for all those who will come after us.